Welcome back, friends. It's another episode of the Mindful CEO. I am here today with my mindful partner in crime, Hendon. Hello, Hendon.
What is up, Mr. Angell? How we doing?
We're fantastic.
You're in Vegas, hot air city, right?
Yeah, it smells like Teen Spirit, or it smells like, it just tastes like hot air all the time. It's just
You didn't have to move. All right. Well,
no.
I'm doing great. To answer your
All right,
question,
good.
I'm doing great. I had a
Thank you.
great night last night. I did something that made 16-year-old me really happy. I,
Nice.
I went to see Dweezil Zappa, and that made me so deeply happy. And then tonight, I'm going to go
Nice.
see the New York Mets play. And
Hey,
then tomorrow, I'm going to go see Willie Nelson, Billy Strings, and Bob Dylan. So I am on a
sounds like your
tear.
self-care routine is in full
It
effect
is.
right now.
Soothing is solving. I'm big into
Soothing
it.
is solving. Like
Yeah.
it.
And we have a guest. We have a guest, and this
Yeah.
is so perfectly timed for what the
Mm.
world is dealing with, what we're
Yeah.
dealing with, and for the thing that's been rolling around my brain. I want to introduce and let him introduce himself. But Philip Blackett is the author of Disagree Without Disrespect, and consultant, speaker, and just a really interesting cat. And I love this idea of being able to explore this topic because this is one of the aspects of mindfulness that we don't think about, like the practical application of
Yeah.
how do we do that. So anyway, Philip, enough about my rambling. Why don't you take a minute and just say hi and introduce yourself and jump in?
Hi, everyone. My name is Philip. Originally from down south in Memphis, Tennessee. So I'm a Southerner at heart, lover of all things Chick-fil-A, barbecue, and sweet tea related. Um, it's really tough to kind of condense like 40 years of life in like a minute or two, but
Yeah, right.
I'll just say this. I was born, I went to school, I worked for people, I've had people work for me. And now I decided to do some work helping people on how to better have relationships with people that they naturally disagree with on things. Hence
That's
my book that I authored, Disagree Without Disrespect, How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You.
Wow.
it's just dynamite. So I want to. There were two different conversations two different paths here that probably will get wound around each other as we're talking about it. But the whole disagree without disrespect idea is something that Chris and I talked about. I know very early on, probably in the last iteration of the podcast and repurpose. Because Phil, one of the things this podcast has developed over time, it started out really as a real estate oriented podcast to give realtors a different kind of conversation other than just how many units they were
Sales.
going to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, sales.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we rail against, and I notice I'm catching myself say rail against, and that's sort of definitely got to be a flag for that I'm now building myself up to contempt.
Mm-hmm.
Railing against is definitely connected to that, because one of the things we joke about is Lamborghini leaning. When you get on Instagram and you look at the real estate agents that promote themselves on Instagram, and they're always leaning up against a Lamborghini, they're an influencer, that whole world. And I noticed that I have contempt for them, and it's something that I deal with personally about it, like how damaging that is to me and to them and to any possibility of honoring them as a human being, is that ease with which I will get contemptuous of people is something that I'm working on being mindful about. So do you get into talk to me about where you see that? Like that's like a casual kind of contempt, like a contempt for an influencer on Instagram, or a contempt for, I don't know them. I got nothing at stake with them. So it's a very cheap kind of contempt. Um, but I think people have contempt for the people they love too. I don't know how do you see that in the book, and what thoughts you have about that?
Yeah, so I think to set the framework or the setting right for everybody, including myself, um, what is your working definition of what contempt is? Just so we're all on the same page.
That's so good. That's so good. Um, it's good because I'm always out to have people define terms because you can't really have a conversation until you define the terms that otherwise you're one person saying one thing, another person's saying another. That's the beetle experiment. So contempt is um, uh, a disdainful attitude towards another's behavior, or
Mhm.
let's leave it at that. Let's start with that. It's some sort of disdain, distaste, a negative judgment, but it's not just a negative judgment. It's my view is superior to their. I'm doing it. I'm they're less than. Contempt has a hierarchy to it.
Mhm.
So I'm better than them.
So it
I
sounds like there's a little judgment feel to it, right?
Not a little judgment feel. Contempt is fully judgmental. There's nothing not judgmental about contempt. I was sort of putting words around the judgment. It's 100% of judgment is
So here's what I would say. I think that everybody has an opinion and view of the world. And when it comes to morality, right? One way or the other, maybe like formally educated or from the school of hard knocks. So you just woke up one day and say, hey, I'm just going to redefine what's right and what's wrong for me, right? Everyone has a sense of that. And I think with that being said, you're obviously going to come across people that don't align with your way of viewing the world or morality. And they may not know where you're coming from as well. And the reason why I say that, Aaron, is like that means that it is inevitable for us to potentially get into contemptuous situations with people,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
And they may not even know of it. It's like
I
the
mean, they don't know that I'm being contemptuous of them.
not at all,
Yeah,
not
right.
until you say something,
Right.
right? So even with the influencer example, right? Like they may have taken a picture with a really nice car and that sort. They may never even know that Aaron exists, but they
I'm
put it
sure they
out
don't.
there. You look at it and you're like, what is this? Right? This person probably will never hear that for the rest of his life. He's gone on about his day driving that same car that you went about. But yet and still, you had a response or reaction to it. And I think what goes off in my head is it's not necessarily wrong to have that sort of reaction if you're able to understand why you're having that reaction. Because I think what's going on in my head is everyone's going to have a response to anything, right? You
Yeah,
know,
totally.
you eat your favorite food, you're going to love it. You try something new, you didn't like it, you're going to go bleh and just spit it out. It's just like the reaction is going to be there. It's not like you're a bad person. That's just it's your response.
Yeah.
But I think what comes off more is more the case of trying to understand why you had that sort of response or reaction to that stimuli, if you want to call it that. Um, and how does it relate in relationship to that person? Right. In this case, this person doesn't know you exist, probably doesn't care, probably will never hear about it. But there may be an occasion where, Aaron, you come across a friend of yours that wants to buy that car and you go, ugh. And the question becomes, okay, does Aaron leave it at just the or do you share with that person why you feel that way, or even get into a conversation to unpack, unravel, and peel back
Mm-hmm.
the reason behind it? And I think that's more of that next level to it, because we're in a society that's more about giving a bunch of uhs on social media and comments and snap judgments in the real world, but no one's really interested or give enough time to figure out why you feel that way. Like, let's
Right.
talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think that's particularly
good.
true. Yeah, I mean, for sure, everything you're saying hits where I go with that is that when we came up with Chris and I do check myself about it and notice that it's purely a judgment. It's really not even there's not even a real why. There's a young conversation about consumerism that I have, like as a child, growing up in a particular environment, anti-consumerism, uh, 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 lavish expressions of wealth. And then there's whatever but I have taken it apart like that. And I do think that skill of defining terms, being interested in what you mean, that's really what you're saying is, what do you mean by that? Tell me more about that. That beginner's mind, that curiosity, that tell me more about that. I get into dialogues. I attempt to get into dialogues like that with people on the other side of the political spectrum, because I am interested in how that logic works, how their logic works about it, and just get interested about it. But I don't think any of that's available if we're going to allow ourselves just to experience contempt and have it end there. I think that's where that's where most of the dialogue stops. Is as soon as I become contemptuous, I stop asking questions.
Yeah, because I think that's key right there, Aaron, too. It's just like, do you stop at just what you said as far as being in contempt with another person? Because I think what goes on in my mind is just you like using that example to like unpack it, to understand about your view about consumerism and anti-consumerism, that sort of thing. These are all things that I did not honestly know about beforehand.
Yeah, right.
But just by asking you a simple question is me understanding more about the reasoning behind it. Like I'm actually learning something about you, right? It's not just like Aaron just like made a snap judgment, shot at the hip, move on. It's like, okay, now we got something here. Like tell me more about this anti-consumerism stance. Like,
Yeah.
where did it come from? Like, why do you feel this way? Now, for the right type of person that's curious to want to get to know somebody better, right? There's a great opportunity there that you see that opening to explore more and share more.
Yeah.
The challenge is we don't have many people nowadays that are interested in exploring and sharing amongst each other now. They just want to take a judgment and run.
Well,
The
the other
question
side
is, how do we change that?
Or they're trying to convince you to take their view. That's the other piece. Is like, I don't really want to get in a conversation with someone where I'm trying to convince them that my view is right, and I certainly don't want to be convinced about their view. I would like to learn where you got your view from and how come you think that way, so that, I think everyone's got lines. Everyone's got, it's funny, Philip, I'll just share this. Chris, you'll barge in if you have to. Okay.
I will.
You mentioned all things Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
And I have a reaction like, okay, no, I don't do Chick-fil-A because of their stance on, the money that goes to anti-gay programs. And
I do it with intention to some degree, Aaron.
I love it. I love that you did that. And I just think it's funny. This is why I think everyone has lines, because my daughter, who's gay, eats at Chick-fil-A. So I'm like, look, everyone's got lines. They draw their own lines. Everyone's a hypocrite where they're a hypocrite. No one is walking this earth on water. We all draw our lines where we draw our lines, and they all make sense to us. And they're our lines, and it's logical to us. And the only shot we ever have is to be open to, well, where are those lines for you? And how did you get those lines? Yep. And isn't that interesting? That's not where I draw my lines. I draw my lines here. My daughter draws it there. I just think it's hysterical that she does. And and then I'm like, but I'm not going to argue with her about it. I'm not like, I would never waste my breath trying to convince someone else that my lines are the lines they should use. I just think that's an insane problem. And that's all that seems to be happening in any kind of what passes for dialogue.
And that's a line too.
That what? Say it, because I didn't. I
was just to say it doesn't make sense to try to convince somebody of a certain point of view. Yeah. Like there's people that absolutely right. There's some people that have that opposite view, is like, that is my like joy of living.
Mission.
That is my reason of
Yeah.
being. It's
Oh,
like
fuck you. That's fucking great.
my day is not complete unless I come at somebody and say, listen, how you say this, what you did, eating that chicken
Uh,
sandwich is wrong.
oh my
And I
God.
Oh
will
my God,
fight you
that's
to the
so
death
right.
on it.
I have
But it's a
contempt
Yes,
about
that's
that.
lie.
so good.
I have contempt for
That
that. How
but
dare you
but
try
here's
to
the thing,
convince
Aaron.
me?
Like I just want to highlight something you said that's really key though. And I really appreciate you saying this. Acknowledging that everyone has a line about something, we just have to understand where it is and where it came from. Like,
yeah.
imagine the type of conversations you would have, the fruitful, engaging, intelligent, provoking conversations you would have simply by just understanding, Aaron, where do you see things on this topic? Why do you see it that way? Why does that impact you the way you do? How do you go across people that feel differently? Like, and that's just on one topic. We could just talk about Chick-fil-A, chicken sandwiches. How do you feel about your daughter eating at Chick-fil-A? And that's just one
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Take that same sort of framework on any other topic, and I promise you, I'll have a much better understanding of who Aaron is and what is important to him. That would honestly, if you're the right person, make me that much more appreciative of him, even if we don't always agree. Because
Totally.
there's so much to that onion we just unpeeled together to better understand who you are and what makes you who you are, that for a lot of people, maybe not as much as before, that's interesting too.
Yeah.
Philip, what's the out, if you think about the work that you do and what you're sharing in your book, what's the outcome of having these kinds of conversations? Like, is the outcome to change the lines that we draw, or what's the fruit that comes from these kinds of interactions?
The fruit is basically what Aaron and I just engaged in, because I would imagine what I tried to illustrate just now is a sense of curiosity for people to learn about one another. Like, it is inevitable, Chris. You and I just met, and I can guarantee you, if we spent a weekend together in Vegas, I can guarantee you two things. And it doesn't even have to be a weekend, it could be just a couple hours in conversation. One, there are going to be some things between you and me that we are in complete agreement with, as if we're like brothers, right? I can
Yep.
also guarantee you another thing. There's going to be at least something that you and I are on complete opposite sides of the spectrum on. We are the farthest from brothers, who are almost borderline not neighbors on this one topic.
Yeah.
And I say that to say that it doesn't matter if you and I just met for the first time, or if you're like family or friends or work colleagues, you inevitably are not going to come across somebody that is exactly the same as you. And so the question about coming across different points of view or disagreements on certain topics, that's not really the question. The question is, when you get to that point, how do you navigate it? Because what Aaron and I just illustrated here, most people don't do. They just
Yeah.
hear Aaron's point. They say, nope, I don't agree with it. I don't like it. And either they try to move on to that topic, never explore it, never take any sort of curiosity to learn more about Aaron, or they'll shut off the conversation, or they'll get into that, I got to convince Aaron that I'm right, and you will duke it out. And one of the worst things I've experienced in conversation with someone who disagrees with me is when you have a conversation with somebody, you're exploring, you're understanding about the person's trying to convince you otherwise still. And then at the end of the conversation, they say, you know what? I should have never had this conversation with you. You weren't going to change your mind. This was a waste of time. And I don't know if you ever had been on the tail end of that conversation, Chris or Aaron, but that's a really yucky feeling that somebody feels like they wasted their time talking to you solely because they couldn't convince you of their way of thinking. Because if that's the way you go about conversations, that's a very simple-minded, very shallow type of conversation that most people don't appreciate with. However, that's where a lot of people are coming from. And so what I try to do is try to open people's minds to a different way of engaging with people when it comes to different points of view that's more fruitful and engaging. And you could still be friends with one another if you don't see eye to eye, because I guarantee you, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris, you got something else?
Well, I was going to say, like, the example you give of like trying to convince someone in its extreme version, where it's like, my intention of this conversation is I really want to convince you, and then I'm done, and you didn't change your mind, so I feel bad. But the nuance of that example is, I could probably go through every day of my life and find where I'm interacting with someone where I have an interest that they shift their perspective towards me. I have an interest that you see things the way I see them, whether it's in sales or it's in coaching. Coaching is often very much, here is a paradigm. I want you to operate it. That's what I'm coaching you for, is to adopt this paradigm. And when you don't, it affects my ability to coach you for what you hired me to do. You know, I'm just saying, like, there's nuance to what you're saying where I'm like, I'll probably have that every day of my life.
Yeah, but I mean, it starts with, Chris is good, because this just goes back to Stephen Covey, seek to understand, not to be understood. It's 100%. You're not going to convince someone until they feel understood, period. End of conversation. That's the entire thing. There's I don't know if it's a story. I mean, it's a meme, it's a story, it's a documentary. I don't know what it is. I read it on Facebook, so the veracity of it is in question, and everything about it is in question. That's where I learned about it. So, but I don't doubt the truthiness, I think is the word I'm looking for, of this scenario. But there was a man in the South who, befriended Klansmen.
I think I know who you're talking
individual
about.
Klansmen, like one-on-one individual Klansmen. Like, he would just have him over for barbecue, and this is a black man, just individual one-on-one, just talking to him, getting in their world, like on a one-on-one basis. People are fucking good on a one-on-one basis. That what you said, Philip, about how much you and I would have in common, if that's what you, and this is now goes into this world of mindfulness completely, because if that's what our attention is on, that's what's going to grow. That's what we're going to have. And so you feel this way about Chick-fil-A and what they do, and I feel this way about it, or whatever else and pick any political hot topic you want and throw it in there. But at the end of the day, if it's just me and you, and it's just me and you having barbecue, and it's just me and you talking, that's a connection. And in that space, in that authentic space of authentically connecting, Chris, views become malleable. I'm no longer as attached to my view, because we're now connected in a way. This is, people do business with people they know, like, and trust, period.
Yeah.
All things being equal, know, like, and trust. All things not being equal, know, like, and trust. You're only doing business with people that know, like, and trust you. So if you're not doing what Philip's suggesting about being curious, beginner's mind, curiosity, getting in there with no intention to change the mind, but just to understand.
Yeah.
You're a used car
Good,
salesman.
dude. Because the thing is,
He said contemptuously of used car salesman.
the tension is, this is why, like, again, we've said this so many times, but the balancing of mindfulness and CEO, that there's a culture in business that is, I have an intention, I have a desire, I have a direction, and my ability to produce that result is very attached to that result. And so me interacting with you, if you're not seeing it the way I'm seeing it, and you're thwarting or getting in the way of me reaching my goal, I can't just chill out and have barbecue with you. I'm trying to get somewhere. So either get on board or get out of my way. And so then there's no agree. And you can put that into politics, because politics is very goal oriented. The goal is this, we're going to get this kind of legislation passed. So it kind of puts a blockage in the way of having this kind of interaction, Philip, that you're describing, I think, simply because we get attached to the outcome we're trying to produce, and you are in my way if you don't see it my way.
Yeah, because I think you put it in a good place, Chris, where if you think about business, CEO, I've supported CEOs, I've been a CEO before. I understand that mindset of you have an objective you're trying to achieve and you want to stay focused on achieving it because there's a lot at stake for it. And what I often propose in that sort of scenario is you have that objective. That's what's firm. That's what's like solid. Now, how you achieve it, there's a little mushiness in that one. There's a little more flexibility there, right? There might be some trial and error that's involved there too. We say, hey, we're thinking about doing this plan. We executed on it. We realized it didn't work. We're going to make this alteration or change to it, and we're going to try something different. But you can do that if you have people that are willing to walk that out with you. So even to the point of if you're with me or not, or get out of my way, as you were saying before, Chris, I think even in that sense too, I think you all can agree with me that a CEO in this instance, to achieve that outcome, it's helpful for you to be mindful of different ways to achieve that outcome. Right?
Yep.
And to have people that say, hey, I'm with you, Chris, to achieve that outcome. I'm on the same team. I'm with you. I may have a different viewpoint on how to achieve that outcome. I would love to share it with you if that's okay with you. And one, me sharing it, I don't want it to come off like I'm negating how you're previously feeling on how to achieve that outcome, one.
Yeah.
And then two, in return, whether or not you agree to go along with my proposal or not, because I'm on the same team as yours and my relationship with you is more important for us to achieve the outcome, even if you say, no, we're going to do something different, I'm still with you.
Yeah.
I'm still on your team.
Yeah.
And I think that whether you applied it to business or you apply it to politics and that sort of thing, that's part of why this book was so rich to me, was that it's helping people understand the nuances, as you mentioned before, where it can't be a on or off switch. Like if you say yes, you like what I have to say. If you say no, well, screw you.
Yeah.
That's not how relationship, like if you want no like trust relationships, you need the type of relationships with the type of people that say, hey, listen, we're gonna come together, we're gonna put on the table what we're thinking about doing. We may have different points of view, and let's talk it out. Let's debate it. Let's figure out what's the best way to go about it. We're not particularly attached to it personally to it. And however way we move afterwards, we're still in the same team together. We still are going to have a relationship that builds from this because we have this understanding that our relationship and us achieving this outcome is ultimately more important than whether or not you're right or I'm wrong. And that gets back to the whole contempt part you were talking about before, Aaron, as far as the superiority thing. If you can get past this whole, I have to be superior, I have to present that superiority stance towards somebody, I can't be seen as inferior, as opposed to saying, listen, let the best idea win. And if we're on the same page about that, and we're going to keep building our relationship with that sort of mindset, that puts you in a better place going forward.
This reminds me a little bit, Aaron, of our conversation with Liam Naden from a couple weeks ago. Because I think if there is no threat, our conversation with Liam was like, if there's a threat, then it's hard to be in a state of allowing. It's hard to be present with our differences, because our differences occur to me as a threat. So, for example, if you're the leader and I'm in your team, if there's an unspoken threat that if it doesn't go the way I want it to go, you could fire me. I could be out on the streets. I might not make money. I have to go find a different job. Like it upsets the rhythm of my life. And so there's a lot of things that get in the threats that get in the way of this type of conscious conversation you're describing. Like in the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, that book talks about being above the line in a conscious state where you are curious, open, and committed to learning, or unconscious where you're defensive and committed to being right about things. And so whether you're even the leader who is unable to get to common ground, who is fighting to be right and contemptuous of your laziness, or however they would describe you on their team, that's a threat for them, because the threat is, I can't get to my goal with your lazy attitude. I can't get where I want to go with you. So I feel like what I'm hearing in this conversation is the thing that gets in the way of we can all have barbecue because there's no threat over barbecue. But the minute the conversation shifts to something that threatens me, now its defense is up and I can't be with the conversation.
Totally. Well, I mean, if it's in the work context, and if you're a threat to the productivity of my team, there's that. But there's also, I don't have for myself as an identity. I don't identify myself as, we'll just go back to the Chick-fil-A thing. I'm not married to that. My daughter unhooked me from that. I'm not, I don't have any, it's good enough for her, right? I mean, whatever, Popeyes is fine for me. But the point is, I don't have anything about it, right? But I was having a conversation with someone, and it was regarding Israel and Hamas, and his view was politically charged, that sort of on the lines that you if you're Jewish, you just cannot vote for a Democrat. And I took that personally. I'm like, okay, you don't speak for the Jews, you probably want to leave that alone, right? Like that.
It's his line.
That's his line. Totally. That's his line, right? And I got interested in, okay, well, tell me about where that comes from and how you think that way, and like that. And he was asking me questions. And at the end of the conversation, it was a little bit, Philip, like what you said, although he didn't say the words, "This was a waste of my time." He just stopped talking, but what he said, the thing he did say that I was up with is, "I'll never understand how you could think that way." And I just thought that is so sad for him. That is like such a hard way to live life.
Mm-hmm.
That you can't get that I have a different view than you, and that you'll never understand that I have this view. I'm not asking you to have my view, but that you are living your life like I'll never understand it. And you could tell he was very, we were talking about how you separate politics from faith.
Yeah.
I was like, because that's where I went with it. I was like, look, my faith as a Jew has nothing to do with my politics. Particularly, those are separate issues for me. I will vote politically how I vote politically, and it's actually a little anti-Semitic to pretend that they're connected, frankly, my friend. And he then said, I don't understand how you can separate politics from faith when the politics of one group is directly attacking my faith. Which I tried to ask him about, but that sort of fell apart there, because I really did want to know tell me more about that. Where is your faith being attacked? Because I'm interested in how he sees that. But then he went down the road of, I'll never, but I guess you're a Democrat. I'll never understand how you people think, something to that effect. That was the gist of the conversation. And I was left disappointed for him. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a burden that is to walk through life. But my point of that whole little thing was, he identifies as those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have those thoughts. He is
thoughts have him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I have the thoughts about Chick-fil-A. I'm not the thoughts about Chick-fil-A, but I am the thought. I'm much more the thought about the Lamborghini leaners, and I'm more the thought about it's funny because my brother and I have very different takes on the Israeli thing. We're both New York Jews, and he's, very clear. Josh Shapiro wasn't picked as the Democratic vice president because he's Jewish. And I'm like, dude, are you fucking with me now? Are you, this cannot be really your argument.
He's not
And,
the only one that's thinking that.
I know he's not. I know he's not, but he's my brother. And I'm like, because I think the people that are thinking that are missing the fact that, there's plenty of Jews in power at any rate, that's the argument. But at the end of the back and forth with him, it ended with the bottom line is that, we love each other and we disagree on this. This is not something that we agree on. I have a very different view, and I'm not out to he doesn't have to have my view, but neither of us identify as our view about that.
Yeah.
We're not threatened when someone has a different view of it. But Chris, I think your thing is when threat is present, we can't, and people have taken to identifying as their opinion, which is cognitive biases all over the place, confirmation bias and recency bias and all the way our brains work to have us identify as an opinion. And that's where mindfulness comes in, because you really do get to separate yourself from your thoughts. You become the person having thoughts versus the thoughts having you. You begin to get behind the waterfall, as the Buddhists say, watching the waterfall of thoughts. And I think that's what you were talking about, Philip, in the beginning of can you, I forgot how you said it in the beginning, but something you said in the beginning made me remember it. And now I'm too old to remember what you said. So anyway, so that's where that whole, if you're willing to have opinions, I don't think, that's got to be that's one of the key elements here, is that I have opinions and you have opinions. I have lines, you have lines. Let's find out what your line, where are your lines? How do you think that? Tell me about that.
Well, here's the other thing too, Aaron, that's interesting about what you're saying. I do believe everyone has opinions. I do also believe not everyone shares their opinions with everyone. Right. And so I think there's a genuine fear and concern that some people have to voice their opinion to somebody that they may have a different opinion on.
Yep.
Where they may feel threatened as far as what comes back to them.
Totally.
Or they may, in the example I shared earlier, you in good faith start to go down the line to have a conversation with somebody. And you try to explore what he or she is saying, and hopefully it reciprocates to want to learn more about what Aaron is saying. And then at the end of it, it's like, you know what? I just, out of frustration, it's just like, I just don't understand why you people just don't understand the way I look at it. Which always gets me in the sense where you said that, Aaron. I was like, okay, so, did Aaron not explain his perspective as well? Is there something he could have said better? Or is there like almost like taking constructive feedback, like, hey, like help me understand how I could have done better here? Or, as we mentioned before, because the end result wasn't Aaron saying, you know what, I'm so sorry, I did not see the light of day here. Like, thank you for enlightening me about how my way was wrong, completely wrong, right, and how yours was absolutely right. Let me ask for forgiveness, turn the other cheek, go on your side, you are superior, and move on, where that person feels validated and, champion-like, to say, yes, that was a worthwhile conversation because I won. And that one is one that's very, very dangerous.
Yes.
Either case, because at the same time, it's completely discounting whatever conversation you had that person could have seek to understand you better. And you basically threw all that out the window because Aaron didn't say, oh my gosh, I'm so wrong and you're so right.
Yeah, which is the only possible response I'll ever accept from my wife at the end of an argument. It's the only, the key to happy marriage is one of us must win. Yeah,
That's your next book.
that's my next book.
Aaron's Key
How
to
to
Happiness in Marriage.
Obviously, it's the opposite. I have to completely kowtow and apologize, and I'm really good at that. What is that? There was it was an Indian guru saying, a man, oh God, what was it? It was a man who admits he's right when a man who admits he's wrong when he's is wrong is wise. A man who admits he's wrong when he's right is married.
That's funny.
Something like that. Yeah. Good. I think there's a lot of, there's a big overlap, big opportunity for the people to apply mindfulness in this context, and then the value for people, Chris, in sales, CEO positions, driven for KPIs, results kind of reality is, fairly obvious and fairly strong, that if we're going to, and like I said, this is as old as it's before Stephen Covey. I'm sure it's in Dale Carnegie. I'm sure it's everywhere, is that seek first to understand. Get ourselves detached from the righteousness of it all.
Yeah.
Non-judgmental approach to life. Philip, any last words? Anything you want to leave people with, or any way they can get a hold of you should they want to talk? Where can we buy the book?
Yeah, I feel kind of sad it was almost over. I
I
thought we
know,
were
it was
just
fun,
getting
right?
started.
Don't go.
I know we could go for a long time.
Here's what I would say. This conversation definitely made me feel all the more validated writing the book I wrote, because once again, it's just a good example of like, this is what is out there as far as like, people understanding how can they navigate disagreements in a way that's not just respectful, but they can also keep their relationships together.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that came out to my mind when you mentioned politically, Aaron, is I would hate to be in a relationship with somebody, friendship, colleague, marriage, parent, you fill in the blank, where every 2 to 4 years, I'm concerned on whether or not we're going to survive.
Yeah.
For no other reason, but there's something politically that's happening that's drawing people apart.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be politically, but just anything that you're unwilling to. I think that guy really said it well. Unwilling to understand. Yep. Are you really unwilling to understand my view? If you're unwilling to understand my view, if you are never going to, then really there's no relationship there. That's the foundation of a relationship. Is
right.
Are we willing to look at another person's view as valid as my view?
Yep. So
everyone has opinions, and what is that saying? Opinions are like assholes.
Oh goodness, everyone has one, right?
Everyone has one. Some just stink more than others.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Thanks for that, Aaron.
I'm gonna veer to the left on that one.
Okay, fine.
And deflect to a question for Aaron on this one before we conclude. Aaron, quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned being married. How long have you been married, sir?
26 years.
26 years. That's wonderful. I'm on 8, so I'm just now coming around the corner, I guess, of what real marriage really looks like once you cross 10 years. Here's what I would say in response, or ask you. In those 26 years, and I think you kind of answered this already, but I just for the record, in those 26 years, have you agreed on everything with your wife?
No.
But why are you still together if you didn't agree on everything?
Because I don't have to agree on everything with her. I mean, we agree that she's going to win most arguments, but other than that, we just we work it out. If it's a big enough deal for us to not agree on, like we didn't agree on, we initially didn't agree on whether or not Jonah should get circumcised.
Mm-hmm.
I was pro circumcision and she was not.
Mm-hmm.
And, we worked that out. I mean, that's a binary choice.
Yep.
That gets worked out one way and not the other way. Someone is going to win that argument and someone's going to lose that argument. And you got to but you can't leave it with someone lost. I mean, Jonah wound up not circumcised, but it wasn't like I lost the argument. I mean, we joke about it, but it wasn't, it didn't feel like, okay, I'll give it to, I mean, she said, good. All right. Well, if you want to do this because he's Jewish, then you better stop eating bacon. And I was like, okay, well, I hope he has fun with his foreskin because I'm not giving up bacon.
We'll compromise, Aaron. We'll go the first 10 years of his life uncircumcised, and then we'll revisit this.
That wasn't the call. But we had a conversation about it. So no, we don't agree on everything. She's not vaccinated for COVID and I am, and kids are, and you just work it out. Everyone's got lines and you just work it out and you just keep. So yeah, there's no need that everyone agree on everything. It's not even possible. It's not even interesting. Who the hell wants to be with someone that agrees with you about everything? How stupid of a relationship is that? You got to have some kind of contrast.
So I say all of that because I don't even have to talk anymore because Aaron already proved my point. You have the most intimate of relationships, 26 years with the same person. I imagine you two are going to be together for the rest of your lives. And clearly you've had some very contentious issues and topics to navigate that you disagreed on. And still, you not only came up with some sort of action or resolution to it, but your relationship not only survived it, but I would imagine probably strengthened in the process.
Yeah. I mean, we just understand each other.
And I think that oftentimes it's marriages that are like 10, 20, 30 plus years that have so much to learn from, where you only have two people, they're together at close proximity, going through different stages of life, raising kids, going through ups, downs, in betweens. They don't agree on everything, and still they're still together. And what always gets me is the thought of what kept you together and what can we learn from that to apply to the fact that for people that we're not married to, how do we do it in a similar way where it's like, look, disagreement, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Don't get shocked over it. Don't get surprised by it. Let's focus on when it happens, not if. How do we navigate it where we can still share what's on each other's minds, come up with some sort of resolution if you want to, and still keep the relationship going.
But you and I don't have, I mean, there's issues that you don't need to get resolved. I mean, you just don't need to get resolved. You and I are never going to resolve our Chick-fil-A issue because it just doesn't. A
resolution could still be, Aaron. It's like, hey, listen, you and I just resolve that you have your point of view. Yeah, I have mine. Totally. We agree to disagree, but at least we share what's on each other's mind. Right. At least know Aaron's piece on it. Totally. And I'll still honor having a Popeye's chicken sandwich with Aaron.
Great.
And then I'll have a Chick-fil-A sandwich with his daughter afterwards.
Exactly.
And I'll be happy all the same because I like both sandwiches.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, we're going to end it there. We do need to end it there.
Yeah, Philip, if people want to reach out to you, connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yep. So my book, Disagree Without Disrespect, How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. It is on Amazon. You can look it up by its title or just my name, Philip Blackett, PhilipBlackett. You can also look me up on my website, philipblackett.com, or connect with me on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. Just look up my name, Philip Blackett.
Perfect. I'll put that in the show notes. Awesome. Philip, what an honor. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for being here. And if you're not a subscriber to the show, subscribe, like the show, comment. What do you do? Review us. We're going to start pitching for reviews, Chris.
Yes, review us already.
Review us. We're good. Even a 1-star contemptuous review. We will take one. I want nothing but 1-star reviews. That would be awesome. All right.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Next time.